The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The People's View is a show sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee. The committee meets every second Thursday at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to contact us, we have a website, nashuagop.org. And at the end of the show, you'll see some contact phone numbers or email addresses that you may want to send us your comments and recommendations. Thank you for listening in.
Welcome to The People's View, a program dedicated to discussing local, state, and national issues and their effect on the American people. The People's View provides a platform for state representatives and national figures to present their viewpoint. Whether it's social, economic, or financial topics, you'll hear it on The People's View.
Hello, today our guest is Doris Hohensee. Doris is with the New Hampshire Families for Education. As an activist in a group like that, tell us what your major priorities are with the
group?
With the group.
Local control. We want parents to be actively involved in the education of their children, whether it's homeschooling or private school or public school. It's all about keeping those parents involved, keeping them supportive of what goes on in the school building, so they, when the kid comes home, that they work in support of what the teacher wants, what the school wants, and it should be a very good and productive combination.
And where do you feel that's not happening today?
Well, Common Core is, and the Smarter Balance assessments are the biggest danger we've got right now, because it's putting a straitjacket on teachers. You've got teachers that are professionals. They're certified, they're trained. They can't innovate. They've got these standards that they have to implement. They're facilitators now. And if that's not bad enough, then they've got these assessments that nobody's allowed to see, not parents. Maybe the teachers are allowed to see them when they administer them, but most of the assessments. Oh, it's in state law that once they're released, that we have the right as a parent to review and inspect them, but they never release them. Isn't that nice?
Isn't that nice?
So we've had them for piloting, for field testing, and next year they're going to go live, and we haven't even seen what they are. And that wouldn't be normally a concern if they were very academic.
Sure.
But these standards are very behavioral, a lot of psychological questions, and very intrusive. And there's a political flavor or even a bias to some of that. And it might be your bias, and you might be delighted with it, but the concept is not very good.
It's not appropriate for that.
No, because if it's biased this way, then later it could be biased that way. It's just dangerous to set that up. And if you can't see what all of this is going on, then it's not very transparent. And they tell us it's very transparent, but it's not.
They don't do it,
It's not.
Yeah.
Like,
just like it's supposed to be a local option. And
oh, yeah. You can choose to do it, and then you voted to do it, and therefore it's local control. But there's towns that have choose not to, like Manchester refused and said, we're going to do our own standards. There's still some controversy what they're coming up with. They haven't made a presentation. Alton has rejected Common Core. Wakefield rejected Common Core and adopted outside standards. They picked benchmark standards from Massachusetts.
Oh, really?
Yes, they had a Massachusetts miracle. They redid their standards, and they became the top in the country, and they're going to use those old standards, which Massachusetts is now revisiting. They accepted the Common Core money, sight unseen, most of the states. Oh, we'll take the money, $60 million or whatever, whatever the number is, and then look at the standards later. They can't be so bad. But now, a year or so into it, they're seeing their numbers slip on some of the other assessments, and they're reconsidering in Massachusetts what they should be doing.
And can they take different tests then?
Well, they've got the PARC test. There's two consortia. Half the country has gone with Smarter Balance, the other half has gone with PARC. They're both Common Core aligned, and they have similar rules. All the information, all the data gets sent to the U.S. Department of Education. There's no privacy protection anymore. The FERPA law has been completely trounced in regulation.
Really?
Used to be that I, as a parent, had to sign off and say, Johnny's information can go here, or Johnny's information can go there. No, they say that it's all protected, but his information can go anywhere to people that provide curricula for profit.
Yeah.
So they can collect all this information. And a lot of the interim assessments, not just the big end of the year Smarter Balance, but the little ones that they have, there's no data privacy regulations on the collection of data. And sometimes they'll give it to you for free or a lower price because you're helping them with the data. So you're really a marketing tool for a corporation. It's sort of like the corporations are now funding and controlling public education, which is
That's
not
right.
quite
Yeah.
right.
No.
So between the data mining and the profit tiering, and then the teachers are going to be evaluated on this, on a test that we haven't seen. And when they say teacher, they don't just mean teachers, they mean principals, assistant principals, librarians, guidance counselors, and teachers.
How can you?
All of those are defined under state law
Yeah.
in terms of the evaluation process as a teacher. So
When did New Hampshire put in these state laws that?
there's a lot of laws, and they came in at varying times.
Because I don't
So-
remember, 2 years ago when I served, that wasn't a
Well, when
real question then.
when they put it in about the evaluation process, I think it was House Bill 142 at the time, and they said teacher as defined in, and they give a statute number. So it's one obscure place where they define teacher in a broad sense.
Oh.
So, it just got in. So now we have, so Manchester, because they had a whole bunch of priority schools, 7 priority schools. Now, these are failed schools based on the old No Child
Right.
Left Behind kneecaps assessments, which they said are no good.
All right.
And they're panning them, they're no good, but yet our schools are failed and still being remediated because of this no good program.
It's really confusing to most people, and I don't know, you're doing a good job at explaining it, but I guess I have 2 questions. One, I don't see the logic in coming in and doing, the kindergarten through 12th grade change all at once, because the people in the high school will not have benefited from that in the lower grades.
Correct.
And how can they, really benefit from this whole new system?
That's a lot of the concerns of the teachers, especially in New York. They're
Yeah.
in riot mode. There's a lot of them have come out and spoken out. And the unions in New York, New Hampshire's a little quieter. But yeah, there's no way of telling because they've got to go through the cycles. I think in New Hampshire we have 2 years where they're going to give us the assessments, but it's not going to punitively be used against the teachers. They have to develop a system where they evaluate the teachers annually, 20% of which will be student performance based on this test or other tests or some combination approved by the State Department of Education. In Manchester, because they had priority schools, they had to start setting this up early, and they got some funding, and they just adopted the state's model because it's easier. It's there. Because otherwise you have to develop a system. It's not just, it's an interactive, it's more complex.
Yeah.
So-
And the other thing, the complexity really means that some kids are going to have a hard time understanding what they read. And my understanding is that from the interviews that I've done in recent weeks, that the reading level of our high school students is very low. And in fact, some people graduate, a large number of them graduate without being able to read to their grade level.
Yeah.
How are they going to understand the tests if they don't really do good reading?
Well, if you have a uniform curriculum, it's got to be the lowest common denominator. We've already thrown out cursive.
Yeah.
The math is 2 years behind what it was before. I mean, they don't get past Algebra 2. They don't even complete all the different concepts that you have. So little by little, as we cycle through the 12 years, you're going to see like AP Calculus replaced by AP Algebra. I mean, what else is there to do? So it's a complete shuffling of the deck, and the people that designed and wrote it, not all of them were teachers with classroom experience. They say it was state-led, but it was money-led.
Yeah.
I mean, if you got 50 people from 50 states with money, and they said, okay, we all got together and we did it, that's state-led. really state-led would be our state legislature authorized our participation. Rhode Island authorized the participation. None of that happened. We bypassed school boards and we bypassed the legislature. So it wasn't state-led in any authoritative sense.
Do you think there's any hope of changing anything now?
Yes, because parents aren't very happy. And there's one thing parents want to do is protect their children.
Sure.
There's that mother bear kind of thing that's coming out all over. And we have...
Get a little couple father bears in there, too.
Oh, yeah. One arrested this past month.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't there in New
Speaking
Hampshire?
of.
Yeah, because there's some book that they didn't, they put in 14-year-olds that they couldn't even read at the school board meeting because it was, it wouldn't have gone live. I mean, they just couldn't repeat that in public. But anyway, this was in a textbook or something they were supposed to read, and they didn't notify parents. They notified them vaguely, and they didn't quite get the idea. So when the parents finally found out after the fact what went down, they were livid. And there was one father who objected to the 2-minute rule and wanted to say more, wanted a little bit more satisfaction. He ended up arrested. So that was a father bear. So
Well,
they
we need a few more people.
Well, not necessarily arrested, but I think
No, not
they're
arrested,
pushing
but
back.
somebody's got to speak up. Somebody's got to make a real fuss about it.
Well, they are, little by little. Like in Manchester, they've now got a court case, and they said that it's sort of this white privilege stuff. It's reverse racism, because the whites have privilege, and the blacks and the Hispanics aren't proportionally represented in the AP and the honors classes. We have to do something about this leveling. So they're doing a pilot on getting rid of leveling in the high school. So now one teacher has to teach the same size classes to 4 different segments. And if that isn't a juggling act, I don't know what is. It's, again, the lowest common denominator, if that goes through.
It's ridiculous. You can't do that. I was thinking, too, of other aspects. You know, you have too many people whose English is not the first language, people who are homeless or in very poor social conditions, and how do you expect them to be at the top notch of the class?
Well, that's why Manchester's very upset with over 100 different languages and all the refugees. We've got a few, but they've got many, many more.
Yeah.
And that's why they've got so many priority schools, in part, because if you don't know the language, you don't do well on your assessments if given in English.
Right.
So it's the logical conclusion, and the mayor, who's the chairman of the school board, is not exactly happy with how it's playing out. And he was the one that said that we're going to develop our own standards, and the board backed him up. And he's hoping not to do the Smarter Balance assessment. He wants his own assessment. And in state law, it says the statewide assessment must align to the curriculum that the children are taught. But if each district is allowed under state law to develop their own, so Manchester develops their own, Wakefield's going to use the math standards, how is the Smarter Balance going to align to either of those? It's not.
No.
So we definitely have a conflict in our laws. The statewide assessments are supposed to be valid, and they haven't been validated yet. They might be after the next year. They're still in testing.
What was that charge at one of our middle schools that the principal wrote back that it was? That they
He said they were inappropriate.
Inappropriate.
Yeah, it's valid, inappropriately, and objectively scored of the 3 criteria. He said that they were inappropriate, and that's sort of on a cognitive level, like the level of, especially, he had middle school, but especially prevalent in like K to 2, which they don't have assessments, thank God, in New Hampshire. But if you're giving a concept to a child before his brain is developed and he can't process that, he feels like a failure. So a lot of the inappropriate is they're doing it where it's age inappropriate. And he's saying in middle school, some of it's inappropriate for one reason or another. So when you have a series of failures because your brain wasn't ready, it's not your fault, and you're having to do it anyway, you have that chronic failing over and over, induces stress. It's just a bad combination. No parent would set up a kid for failure.
No.
So that's, it's not really the wisest thing.
Well, do you think that the legislators get involved more in this next session?
I'm hoping. I think there was a beginning of a bipartisan effort. There were people on both sides of the aisle that were concerned about the data mining. There was one bill that was passed, but it doesn't even begin to cover the scope of the problem. There's legislators on both parties that are worried about the high-stakes testing. They say, oh, no, they're not high-stakes testing because New Hampshire only has a 20% evaluation based on performance, whereas New York has 40.
Really?
So they're higher. We're high, but, you know, it's still high-stakes testing. But those are the two big issues that I think everybody agrees on we need to protect. The unions are coming out. In Nashua, they were saying that this is inappropriate.
Right.
And I know Alton, they rejected Common Core. Wakefield, they rejected. So do they? Londonderry and Dover also want alternatives to Smarter Balance. I think Londonderry would put in 2 years ago or is asking for a waiver to Smarter Balance, and they're being told, well, there isn't one. And they wanted to do the SATs, which are also Common Core aligned. Shouldn't be a big problem, but they don't have the green light. So we need to watch our next waiver, because we have a No Child Left Behind waiver, because really that's the federal law that we're under. So through regulation, which I don't know how you supersede statute through regulation, but that's what they're doing. They're giving exemptions to federal law with these waivers, and we have to make sure that ours is broad enough to meet the needs so that we don't have like Nashua. We know they're inappropriate. We know it's not good. We want to delay them. But if we do so, we're jeopardizing the whole state's funding. So that's a big burden.
That's ridiculous.
Well, because it's not the district, it's the state's funding because the state promised to do it. So if the state doesn't do it, and Nashua is the second biggest district, they felt that they were, you know, just not being responsible board members. And they shouldn't have to, this is what's best for our kids, and this is what it should be lined up better. So this is a problem.
I know that they voted not to delay it, so they're going through a 2-year period where it's sort of in transition, or
2 years where it's not punitive high stakes.
That's all, but they're going to implement all this.
They're going to have the stress of the test. They're going to have scores. They have something like a cut score. Every state is different. Some secret committee, which there's no transparency, otherwise I'd know how this was, but somebody meets in a dark room somewhere, sets the cut scores, and then everybody has to meet that or better to meet standards. Otherwise, you're below standards. And
So it's either pass-fail type of thing?
well, I think they have four letters.
different-
Yeah, exceeds by a lot, meets, almost meets, and then woefully inadequate or something. But they've got,
great.
they have four, and they're changing report cards. It's not going to be A, B, C, or D. It's going to be I, E, like exceeds standards. I is, you know, whatever. They different lettering for this. So it's a complete revamping. And
How's that going to affect the colleges? How are they going to evaluate something
interesting.
like this?
And I'm sure that adds to the
And
stress of the high school
supposedly this
students.
is what one of the reasons is to get our standards up higher so that we're equivalent to students elsewhere in the world and in the States.
Well, I think they're playing with statistics. I think if you took all those English language learners out and maybe some of the special needs kids out, we're scoring just fine. But when you throw them all back in there, we don't look so good. So they're using that as an excuse. So we're failing, as we need reform, as give us all the control. We'd be happy to do it from Washington. Don't you worry your pretty little heads, because you don't have to worry and be responsible. We'll just send you money and instructions on what to do. No, that's not, it doesn't work that way.
Well, does the New Hampshire Families for Education have a program which is fighting this? I know you have spoken
We have a website
around.
where we get out information, both on the web in general and on Facebook, where we have more immediate like legislation we're following. So like today we had a committee of conference on a bill. We were trying to say the objectively scored, our statewide assessments have to be objectively scored. They have dispositional questions. Those are behavioral questions, values, attitudes, and beliefs. We don't want those in there. The legislature last year said, no, we'll do knowledge, skills, get rid of the dispositions. So they removed that word. But there's no prohibition in statute saying, do not do this. And they're in the Smarter Balance exams, because you can look on the website and it says we measure dispositional whatever. So it's like, we have a problem here. So we put some language in 2 sentences that say that it have to be academic and that non-academic was not allowed. Well, that sentence went out. We still have that it's academic only, but they're trying to mute our effect. So if that passes the House next
By
week.
non-academic, is, you know, I've heard people tell me that some of the questions are does your family smoke, or do you
Right.
have guns in the house, and all
Right.
that sort of stuff. That's the non-academic. What
Well,
purpose
it's not
is
only
that?
that, it's how do you feel about different things,
That's
you know.
right, yeah.
Your reaction to death, your reaction to this, because a lot of the program from what we're seeing, and again, we don't have the access to the assessments, and the curriculum, they say, is not defined by the standards, and there's all these Common Core aligned books all over state to state, which all should be the same since we all have the same standards, but they're saying, oh, it's idiosyncratic to here or there. But they seem to be trying to take each child and mold them, and then when they don't have the right attitudes or values, then remediate and just keep working on them until they think the way they're supposed to, what's appropriate, whether it's in science or it's in history or it's or whatever the subject is, or civics.
Has anybody tried to say, you talked about this transparency a lot, or lack of thereof, have the state say that the scores have to be open to the parents within X number of days after the taking?
How do you do that to the state legislature? You can command to the department, which is a creature of the legislature. I mean, we authorize the State Department of Education in statute. You can say they have to release it, but it's not released to them. This private consortia owns it. So until the consortia releases it to the department can't release it to our people.
Oh, I would suggest that you make it that no test can be taken.
Yes.
That cannot be made transparent to the parent within X
So
number of
many days, yes.
Do something that way.
That will be
and then you get rid of the test.
Yeah.
If they don't want to let it transparent, well, we won't use it.
Well, I don't think they should be giving them because
Yeah.
they're not validated. You look at Smarter Balance,
Well, that was the other question
we
I had.
have this
Nobody answered that.
timeline,
Yeah.
and it says here that Smarter Balance will be validated after 2015. It starts in 2015. So we have a non-valid test that has behavioral questions that can't be objectively scored, and our teachers have already said it's inappropriate. So it doesn't meet 3 of the criteria in state law. So I think a district should be able to say, well, I'm happy to give them, but this isn't a valid
Right.
assessment. Give me something that I could administer.
Right. Good idea. No, they claim that they're doing this so that the children all upgraded somehow, and that is what the colleges want. And the
Yes.
colleges, is my understanding, have never really evaluated any of this.
That is the excuse, but how does getting rid of cursive help anybody?
Yeah.
You can't sign your checks. You can't read the Declaration of Independence because it's in cursive. There's a lot of documents, historical documents that you can't. It used to be, if you're going into science, you have to learn French or German so you can get the original
Right.
documents.
Right.
Well, cursive opens the door for a lot of things. You're going to be signing your checks with an X. I guess you'll just do online banking.
Well, it was like that high school graduate in that Florida trial that couldn't read the note because it was cursive.
Yeah,
A high school graduate.
yeah, yeah.
And one of the things I'd like to find out from locally here, 2 years ago, the level of Nashua high school graduates that took, remedial courses at Nashua community colleges was very high.
It's very high. Well, the other thing is if you lower the math by 2 years,
Yeah.
now the colleges have to lower it by 2 years. So what used to be remedial math, there's a lot more of it. I mean, it follows the high school down. So in that sense, you're going to be paying a lot more, or you're going to be getting out of college with a lot less. Either way, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
And the whole thing is the federal government shouldn't be having control
Of this
over
at all.
education.
Yeah, yeah.
They're only doing it because they bribed us. They have no constitutional authority. It's a state issue.
No.
They're not supposed to set the curriculum, so they only do standards and assessments. They dodge it on both sides. They're not supposed to do national databases, so they paid us to set up a longitudinal database that has 400 data points per student. That went live in April of 2012.
Really?
Yeah, that's in addition to the assessments themselves, which all the information goes to the U.S. Department of Education. And since they're adaptive tests, the consortia has to pull the information for each student and correct it on the fly. If you're doing well, you get a harder question. If you're not doing well, they'll give you an easier question. So they need all the data immediately. And it's not aggregated. It's personal.
Well, it really is amazing what they're trying to do, and they're getting away with it.
It's sort of like the big lie, because they keep telling you it's transparent.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, it's hard to find this information. Okay, do you know how they got into our school districts? They adopted it in 2010. They got it June 9th, 2010, and then they immediately the week prior to that, and then they had a public hearing in June, and then one in July, one on math, one in English language arts. Do you know how many members of the public attended? 0. So we had 2 public hearings. Nobody knew that they were coming, and there were 2 60-page documents that were the final draft, not really the standards, a draft, and we adopted it because we wanted race to the top money, which we didn't win, but we adopted it. And somewhere in there, we adopted Smarter Balance. But I asked the department representative today, when did we adopt it? Was there a hearing? Oh, yes. Well, when was it? I said, I scoured the minutes, and it's not anywhere. Oh, well, she'll find out that information for. It's not transparent. It's state-led, but it's not. What happened was they have regional liaisons. It's part of the Commissioner of Education, state commissioner. She has regional liaisons, 5 of them. They go into each district on a monthly basis. They meet with the principal, the superintendent, and the curriculum specialist to tell them one thing, how to implement Common Core. So they meet in the district monthly, then they meet back with the commissioner and tell them how it's going. This is the back door that they use. It's not legislative governance of any means that what our legislature approved. So they're putting it in the back door without our school boards or parents knowing about it. And then once it's already in our schools, they say, hey, guess what? It's there. And it was state-led. Like, I don't know how you pull the states around, but this is not state-led. And we don't even own it. It's copyrighted by 2 trade organizations.
Yeah, I heard that.
So
there's the business aspect of it coming into that.
Yeah.
Somebody's
But we
gonna
can't
collect
change
a
it.
lot of money.
If we let it, don't you think we could change? There's no mechanism for changing it. It's a straitjacket.
Yeah.
So I just don't see any advantage. It's not like teaching arithmetic, teaching chemistry is really that complex that we can't do it on our own like we did before.
No.
So I think a little
Well, I hope you get
ingenuity.
the word out, because maybe you can use this show to
I
go
hope
on. It's
so.
public access.
Yeah.
It's open to any public access channel in the state of New Hampshire.
That's true. That's a good
So
idea.
you could have
Put it in the other
this
cities
interview
or towns, yeah.
that you could bring up at a local meeting on education.
Right. And we're also willing, there's a number of mothers and legislators that are willing to go to different towns. Like I've went up to Alton and Manchester, Wakefield. There's a couple other towns I'm going to be going to. So if anybody has a town that they're just starting the conversation and want somebody to come in and present the other side,
Yeah.
we're more than happy to come out. I'm more than happy
That's
to
good.
come out.
I'm just still looking for somebody to defend this, to speak on this show, but I haven't found anybody yet.
Oh, to defend Common Core?
Yeah.
Well, it's just wonderful. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Well,
except
you
it's
know,
not practical.
yeah.
It's just,
But we're now on YouTube also.
Oh,
so,
great.
So you can reference that on your website.
I mean, even homeschoolers, they don't have one uniform curriculum. That's the whole beauty of it.
That's right.
You can look at your child, get their strengths, their weaknesses, and adapt.
That's why they're putting up charter schools too.
Exactly. And teachers have that ability
Right.
because they're professionals.
Yeah.
Even mothers are motivated to do it at home. So it can be done. So why do we want a straitjacket and we're so busy trying to implement something? And the problem is once these teachers are labeled ineffective, that's
Yeah.
when they're evaluated, they're either effective or ineffective, then they can move them around because we have to have the right number of effective teachers in every school. So if you've got an inner city urban
Yeah.
school, there may be more ineffective teachers because the kids don't do well and their teachers are not ineffective.
Right.
And the teachers that work with the special needs, they could be some of our best teachers and the kids could have been even more lower performing
Yeah.
if without those teachers. So the whole thing is, it's going to be
Well, your
crazy.
comments have been eye-opening in a way, and I hope people take this to heart and look into it a little bit more in each district.
Oh, I
And
hope
Thank you
so.
for your time, but we've run out.
Oh, that was quick.
So thank you for coming today, and we'll be talking to you more.
Great, thank you.
Okay. And thank you for listening.
preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.